Howdy champs, my name is Mohit and people, today we're going to talk about the fluid grid layout in Adobe Dreamweaver CS6. Now probably the fluid grid layout is the best thing that happened to Dreamweaver 6, probably the best thing that ever happened to Dreamweaver CS6. Excuse me. Okay. Now, what exactly is fluid grid layout? Why was it so necessary to have it? Now, I'm sure you realize that devices like tablets, these smartphones are extremely popular today, and we love to, on the go, as we are mobile, browse, surf on these devices. That presents a big challenge to the web developers to make our web pages adapt to different screen sizes, different devices, different screen resolutions. Okay, and so how do we actually make our web pages quickly adapt to these different screen sizes? The answer is fluid grid layout, as given or as provided with Adobe Dreamweaver CS6. A very powerful tool, lets you create such responsive web pages very quickly. Okay, in fact I have already made one such page which we'll recreate though a little later. Let's first have a look at this page. Okay, now where you see lorem ipsum written out here is acting like the header, and we have three different adjacent divisions. Okay, now this is the desktop view. It's fluid. Let me prove my point. Okay, let me just shrink it a little bit and see as I collapse the width, you can see the change that's happening. Okay, and I'm very close to the tablet size now. So notice that the H1 and the images out here are going to change their size the moment I crunch it enough to enter the tablet size. I've just entered the tablet size, people. Notice the changes that have happened. Notice that the heading has actually shrunk a little bit by 0.2 EMs to be precise. Notice the change in the image size out here. Also notice that earlier we had three divs sitting adjacent to each other. Now there are two divs adjacent to each other, and the third one has actually gone down under these two divs. Okay, so it's a responsive web page, and I'm going to enter the smartphone size now. There we are. Okay, now notice that this has gone down by 0.2 EMs further, and the three different divisions are actually above and below each other, not adjacent to each other as they were in the desktop view. So this kind of response is possible with, as I said, the very powerful tool, the fluid grid layout. Okay, let me close it up. Now this is my local site folder, people. I have this index.html file. I have a couple of images that I'm going to reuse, and I have this CSS folder. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get rid of these three files. We have a JavaScript respond minified JavaScript file, and we have a boilerplate cascading style sheet file that come along with the fluid grid layout, and the very purpose is to enable the web pages to respond to the different sizes consistently through all the browsers, through all the versions. So I'm going to get rid of them. Okay, all three of them. We're going to recreate everything from scratch, and I'm also going to get rid of the index.html HTML file. Okay, I'm going to jump back to Dreamweaver CS6, and let's see how this was actually done. Not too difficult, people. So I'm going to say a file and a new, or I can say new fluid grid layout, and you see you are presented with this kind of a structure. Let me click on this button to reset and say reset to default. Now you see these vertical pink bars. They are nothing but visual aids. They are grids. Okay, they are grids that act like the visual aids in the true sense, in the real sense. They're not present there. There's nothing pinkish out there. There's no such grid out there physically. They're just visual aids or visual grids. Okay, and the gutter size is 25% of the column width. So what I'm going to do is, to start off with, I'm going to change it to 15. Okay, I beg your pardon. I'm going to change it to 15. Also, notice out here that the total width for the mobile is 91%, for the tablet has been set at 93%, and for the desktop has been set at 90%, which is okay. I'm not going to fiddle around with that. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to change the total number of grids for the desktop from the number 10 to a number 12. Okay, so just altered some default values. I'm happy to keep the doc type as HTML5, and I'm going to hit the create button. The moment I do that, I'm asked to save the CSS file. So I'm going to call it responsive. It indeed is responsive. Okay, and I'm going to push it inside the CSS folder, which is empty right now, and I'm going to save it out there. Okay, wonderful. Okay, all people have a look out here that I'm in the classic view. It really helps. It helps me at least. It's my preferred view, so I'm in the classic view. Let me save the file up as well. That should be the very first step. In fact, let me give it a title before I save it. So I'm going to call it responsive web page. All right. And let me save the file up. I'm going to call it index. At the same time, Dreamweaver wants me to save two dependent files, the boilerplate.css, the respond.min.js. Now, as we discussed earlier, these two files allow us to respond to different sizes and respond consistently through all the browsers, through the different versions. So Dreamweaver is really helping us out here. That's why I say this is the best thing that probably ever happened to Dreamweaver. And then I'm going to make sure that I push these two files, the CSS and the JS file, in the CSS folder, and let's say copy. So I'm actually done. Okay, now have a look out here. Here at the bottom, I'm allowed to make modifications to my web page in 3 different sizes. The first size upfront that is presented to us is the mobile, or the mobile, 480 by 800. This is the tablet view, and this is the desktop view. Let me be back to the mobile view. As you can clearly see that we have the 15% column gutter, and we have 5 different grids. Again, they are nothing but visual aids, people. To be absolutely sure that they're not physically present out there, I'm going to say fluid grid layout guides. Let me set it off, and they actually disappear. Okay, now they are back. Okay, let me click out here. Notice that in the body of the web page we have a div, which is this one, inside which we have another div which has an ID of layout div1. Now I really don't need this, so what I'm going to do is, the very first div, let's keep it as the header div, not the layout div1. I can either rename it, or I can hit the delete button, and I can insert my own div. So making sure that I'm in the classic view, people, I'm going to click out here, insert fluid grid layout div tag. If you are, you probably may be in the design view, and that option may be somewhere out here for you. Okay, so I'm going to click out here to insert a fluid grid, and I'm going to change the ID to a header. It's a good semantic name, and I'm going to start with a new row. So basically I'm going to create a block level content. Okay, I'm going to say okay now. And next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 more divs. I'm going to call them div1, div2, and div3. So I click out here again. I'm going to call it div1. I'm okay to have it start at, with a new row, so another block level element. And I'm going to say okay. Again, I'm going to click out here, but this time I do not wish that it should start in a new row, but I'm okay to have it start in the same row. Basically, I wish to have it as an inline element or an inline div, and I'm going to call it div2. And similarly, notice the small indent out here, people. And I'm going to have one more such div. So that's a div3. No new row. Please listen to what I'm saying carefully. No new row in the same row. And there we go. Notice that the div2 and div3 are indented. Basically, I would want to use them in the desktop view in the same row. And we'll soon see what I mean by that. Very cool. Let me save the file up once again. And if I go to the CSS styles tab out here, notice that we have a boilerplate.css and a responsive CSS file out here. Cool. Next up, people, I'm going to use some lorem ipsum dummy text. I'm going to switch to the split view. I'm going to bring in some lorem ipsum, Control A, Control C. And I'm going to insert the text in the code area like so. When you are in the split view and you're making modifications in the code area, you're less likely to go wrong. Okay, and I'm also going to make sure that the lorem ipsum is actually encapsulated in the p tag or the paragraph tag. Okay, that's very cool. So the div1 has some paragraph lorem ipsum. Let me copy it and push it in div2 like so. Control V to paste, and let's push it in the third div as well. Control V to paste. Okay, now have a look out here. That I pushed in lorem ipsum in div 1, 2, and 3. At the same time, I'm going to go to the header. I'm going to remove this text out here, and in between the opening h1 and the closing h1 tags, I'm going to push in these 2 words, lorem ipsum. Okay, there you go. Right. Now, let's say save all, and let's have a look up in the browser to see what exactly have we made so far. Okay. Cool. Now, I'm going to go to this responsive .css file and study it a little bit. I'm not going to touch the boilerplate.css, nor am I going to touch the minified version of the JavaScript file, but I'm really interested in this responsive.css file. That is where I'll be making all my changes, people. And let me be in the okay, let's focus on this file a little bit. Okay, now it's actually divided into 3 sections. The first CSS was written for the mobile device, which is out here. So the grid content, layout, div, header, div1, etc., etc. And then all these rules are repeated out here in line number 76, but here the they are repeated simply because they have to cater to the tablet device. Okay, and here at the bottom they are repeated a third time, but this time the media query is for the desktop. So the CSS has been repeated thrice for the three different sizes that we have to cater to: the smartphone, the tablet, and the desktop. Okay, now we need to remember that this CSS responsive.css file is extremely touchy, so we have to be extremely careful while making changes to this CSS file. Some suggest that it's a good idea to have a separate CSS file and not alter the responsive.css at all. But with practice, I've seen that just being a little bit careful is okay, and you can make mild modifications to this file without any problem at all. So also one pointer that one needs to remember is that the changes that you make to the CSS of the smartphone or the mobile is going to affect the is going to cascade, is going to ripple over to the tablet and the desktop. But the true is the reverse is not true. So if you make any changes to the desktop, that's not going to cascade or ripple over to the tablet and the mobile. But if you make changes to the tablet CSS, it's going to ripple down to the desktop CSS. So just be a little careful, right? So the first rule that I wish to create for the mobile CSS, or the mobile CSS, is the color of the body. And let's start writing our own CSS, making sure that it's under the mobile layout in line number 30. Okay, so that's the first CSS rule that I'm writing, and I wish to say background color. And Bollywood. Okay, there are 147 HTML color names that are accepted. It's one of them. Okay, cool. Okay, very cool. The second CSS rule that I wish to write is for the H1 and the paratags. It's a multiple rule, and I'm gonna say margin 0px, but let's say the padding, let's keep it at 15px. Okay, so I've just created these two CSS rules, and I would want to see how the web page looks now. So let me save file, save all. Let's take a preview up in the browser. Let's say Chrome. Okay, let's get back. Now notice that I'm still in the mobile view, the mobile size view. Okay, now what I wish to do is I wish to have the header, the div1. In fact, I don't need the layout div1 to to start off with. We had this div, but I had actually removed it, so I don't need this rule at all. I would want to have different background colors for header div1 and div2 and div3. So what I'm going to do is, let me just copy this bit, background color, and let me go to the header and paste it out there. Just going to change the word Bollywood to beach. Similarly, let me go to div1, change the color to bisque. For div2, blanked almond, and for div3, wheat. Let me tell this to you once again, that I'm making the changes to the CSS of the mobile, not the tablet, which follows here, or the desktop, which follows here, but the CSS that I've written for the mobile is going to cascade down, it's going to ripple down, and it's going to affect these two layouts too, for the mobile and the desktop, as we'll soon see. In fact, let me say save all, and let's take up a preview in Google Chrome. Okay, so things are starting to happen. Very cool. Okay, now at this point of time, people, I'm going to switch over to the desktop size, and let me be in the design view for some time, and I'm going to come out here where I have div 1. I'm going to crunch it down to 4 columns. Remember, we have 12 columns. I don't need to be very accurate. It's going to snap to the 4th column automatically. Similarly, I'm going to click out here. I'm going to push it down to 4 columns, and notice what happens. It automatically jumps up and occupies the space next to div 1. I'm going to do the same with the last div. While you're crunching, people, make sure that you're doing it from the right hand side. Doing it from the left hand side is going to shift the div. It's going to add a margin. It's not going to crunch the div at all. So be sure that you do it from the right hand side only, and crunch it down to 4 columns. Again, don't need to resize very accurately. It's going to snap to the 4th column. Okay, so see what has actually happened out here. The 3 divisions are now sitting adjacent to each other, rubbing shoulders, and that's the magic of the the fluid grid layout. I'm going to take you through the browser preview now, like this. Okay, pretty cool. And now I'm going to switch over to the tablet size. This time I wish to have, for the tablet size, if you remember, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 grids. So I'm going to make sure that we have 2 divs sitting next to each other, third one down below. So 4 columns for this one, 4 for this one. And as far as the third div is concerned, I'm going to click on this symbol, which is going to snap it to the left hand side. Okay, that'll flush from left to the right completely. So we are done with the tablet layout as well. Let's switch over to the mobile view, and this time all I need to do is click out here in the second div, snap it to the left hand side by clicking on this symbol and the symbol for the third div. Now all the 3 divisions are under each other, above and below each other, and that's exactly how I would want the view to be. So let's save the changes up, and let's have a look up in the browser to see how they reflect. Okay, now this is the desktop layout. Let me just crunch it, and notice how as I constrain the width, you see how this is the tablet view, and this is the third view, which is the smartphone view or the mobile view. Notice how the web page is now very much fluid, very much responsive. Okay, I'm going to end the part 1 of this fluid grid layout out here. In the next part, we'll see how we can actually alter the size of the heading 1 depending on which view we are in, whether we are in the mobile view or the tablet view or the desktop view. We're also going to add 2 pictures to div 1 and 2 respectively, and we are going to see how we can make those pictures flexible in size as well, how they respond to the change of the width. Okay, so people, This is the multi-screen preview. This is the smartphone preview. Three different divisions after the header, sitting under each other. This is for the tablet. Two divisions, left and right, the third one at the very bottom, at the very base, preceded by the header right at the top. And this is the header, and this is div 1, 2 and 3, and this is the desktop view, people. Alright, so don't forget to join me in the next part. I'll see you soon. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial so far, learned something from it. You have a good day. Bye bye. Peace.